Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Something Something podcast. My name is Eric Kasloff, and his name is.
Larry Sands.
Well, you kind of sound
Hello.
like a game show,
Hello.
game show announcer.
That's right. That's right. Actually, when we were talking about, the Ed McMahon stuff, you really got me thinking. I'm really pumped about this, Eric. I love doing it. I love doing it. It
I'm
spices up
glad
the
you
show.
said that, Larry, because the Ed McMahon stuff got me thinking.
Uh-huh.
Feel if I gave you a banana, would you be happy with it? No,
What do you
seriously,
mean, Eric?
how would you feel if I gave you a banana? Would you be happy with it?
Yeah, like a second banana?
No, I was gonna say if I gave
first
you
banana.
another banana, you'd be even happier, right?
Yeah, of course.
Because it's all about the
Kinda.
second banana. No one cares about the first banana. The second banana is the money banana. It's like
I'm gonna go crawl up in a ball. That's
hey,
hilarious.
who wanted to play as Mario as a kid? No one. Everyone wanted to be Luigi.
Luigi, that's right. Hello, I'm a Luigi.
All right, so
Yeah.
before we get into our guest, I gotta tell
Mhm.
you a funny thing that happened yesterday.
Okay, go for it.
So my mom, we park outside of our house, and my mom made a mistake and got a ticket, and we admitted to a mistake on the first ticket. But then we got two more tickets that day that we didn't do anything wrong. So my mom decided, you know what? I'm going to take this to court. Now, the Lodi, New Jersey, courthouse is spitting distance from me. So we get there yesterday with all our paperwork. We talked to the prosecutor before they call us into the courthouse so my mom could talk to the judge. Now, I'm in there thinking this is going to be silly stuff, nothing serious.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and then these cops come in with a guy in a prison jumper and chains.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on here, Mom? What did you get me involved in? So now,
That's hilarious.
the guy, then the other guy next to him is in street clothes, and he's chained up too. And I felt like all he did was have some pot.
Oh my God.
So they called my mom up. Now, apparently, the prosecutor was nice enough to write off one of the tickets, so there were still two others. The judge is about to make his verdict, and right before he does, the lady next to him goes, there's no record for the second ticket. So the judge goes, you know what? Dismiss. All charges dropped.
Oh,
man,
nice.
I've never been in a courtroom before.
Well, you are deterred forever now.
Yeah. And
Same money.
With that lovely voice we just heard, will you please bring Segway Sam in to introduce?
Oh, let me find a good segue. Well, Eric, it's funny you should mention about court, because our next guest has nothing to do with anything about being in court.
No,
but
definitely not.
But she is, well, first of all, her name is Alex Olivera. Good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Good. Now,
Great.
reading on your website and through your little, your bio, and now, are you a psychotherapist?
I am a therapist. I don't know if I am a psycho, but maybe after hearing all these stories, I could become one.
Oh, you know what? That's a great segue then. It's a great segue. But
it's like, wow, who wants to be in the shoes of Eric, of his mom, right?
Right. That's hilarious. That's crazy. I guess. So So this is interesting. So, I don't know if you know a lot about our podcast. What we do is we're a creative podcast, and we talk with, writers and actors and directors, anything dealing with the creative industry. But one of the most interesting things that I'm finding out is the normal life of all our creative people. And for creatives, we have like different types of jobs and stuff, and because that's the nature of the beast, that's the way it is. But it's always interesting to have a professional on that is part of the creative community. And I think it's super. I always think it's interesting on my part to have a therapist or somebody that deals in that territory, and then able to put their creativity to it and write a book, which is what you've done. And so let's start. I guess let's start from the beginning. Is what made you want to get into the field you're in?
Which field, actually?
Both.
Yes.
It's like I really have the feeling that I covered quite many fields, but punctually, if we are talking about the book, it's about writing. I think it's something I've been doing all my life in different ways. Like I used to write poetry since I was quite young, but somehow it's like I have this need to create, to do things with everything that's going on inside of me, to put it out there. So a book was just, a part of what I do, which is to produce things. Yeah, in the same way that I paint or I produce some special food, or I take care of landscaping or designing. I feel that I am kind of multiple in a way, like I have like multiple exits, if you wish.
Yes, it sounds like it. How did you get into the psychology field?
I knew I had a gift for listening to people, and many of my friends would ask me for advice, and people that I didn't know would start asking me for advice. And then I realized I was really helping people, and I wanted to do it in a more professional way, and I knew I had the capacity to do so. So I went to university, I started studying, and I focused on some of the most difficult issues in the mental health, which is dissociative identity disorder, which it was considered like a fiction for many, many, many years because of the many faces of Eve, or I cannot really record the movie, but they were like saying, multiple personality. What is this? It's really like a fiction, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of.
Wow.
So I started researching, and I wrote this.
So I do know that it is interesting because you're a clinical psychologist. What is your area of expertise in the psychology field?
Well, I specialize in dissociative identity disorder. Actually, I must confess that I am not practicing right now for quite some time because I'm dedicated to other things. But while I was practicing, this was the field I mostly was working with, which actually is very difficult because they're very demanding patients. So, yeah, patients that generally are hospitalized, they have multiple diagnoses, nobody really understands, they medicate them as if it would be a kind of psychosis, and you cannot consider it like a psychosis, actually. So, it's very misunderstood.
Well, yes, I can add, yes. I mean, even right now, it's kind of mind-boggling. But it's so interesting that you're in this field. Is this what your book is about? And the name of your book is Be Here Dragons.
Yeah, I love the name of it, by the way. It's so cool and different.
Yeah, well, the book is not about that. The book is about a love story. And it has a psychological background, because you cannot avoid but to put on the table who you are with whatever you do.
Right. Yeah.
So whether I want it or not, I have this knowledge that helps me understand certain ways of behavior of people and the way things develop, and what is the most likely outcome for these things. So this is really like away from my profession as a psychologist, but somehow it's like soaked in when I develop the characters. I guess when you produce a movie, let's say, you need to understand the profile of your character. And then maybe you also call a group of psychologists to help you, like, to work the character out. And sometimes it's so good and so believable, especially for me, that I look at the movie from a psychological point also. And I say, well, that's not really accurate because like this. But when it's well done, it can be very amazing because it's very believable. So in a way, I was my own advisor when I was writing my book about things that were happening in my book. And, the characters, when someone dies, they start taking life of their own, and they start doing things without the permission of the writer.
Right,
so
right.
The writer has to say, hold on a minute, what are you doing? And then you start like this dialogue with the character.
Yeah.
And the characters end up doing whatever they want. So then you have to interpret, this is the reason why this person is doing this or that, or this character, because it's not really a person, it's a fiction character.
Did you have any formal training in writing novels, or are you self-taught?
No, not at all. I didn't. I am self-taught, except in the field of psychology. I would say in every other field I am self-taught.
Okay, so can you give us like a little bit of what the basic story is to Here Be Dragons?
Yeah, sure. Here Be Dragons is how do you say that in English? It's a translation from Hic sunt dragons, which is a Latin phrase that used to be written in the maps, in the borders of the maps, so that the sailors would know that beyond this point, they could not venture because all kind of monsters were going to be there.
Oh.
And you see in the old cartographers, you see in the old maps, all these inscriptions. If you ever seen ancient maps, even from the 1500s, they even believed that perhaps Marco Polo was the one that started putting dragons in the maps that he was doing when he was going to China and all these unexplored territories. So basically, what we are talking about in this novel is what about unexplored territories and how to deal with them. And it also has to do with ourselves. And the dragons in ourselves are territories that frighten us and are our own dragons. So you have to conquer the dragons. In the mythologies, in the legends, you always have someone that has to have a fight with the dragon to save the princess. It's like, this is more or less the same. The struggle is always with oneself. So the whole book is happening in Japan, and it's like a sequence of stories that they end up braiding something together to get to a unity. And it happens through many periods in the history of Japan.
Wow.
But basically it arrives like, it is like from the Edo period, which is like the 1500s, until the 1970s, about that time.
Wow. How did you come up with the storyline?
I think an author never really knows. is
Yeah.
is like a recollection of things, that you live through, and then things start building up, and as I said before, they start building their own story, and then the story is told to the person that is writing. In a way, a writer is like the medium between these stories that are happening in some other plane or something, or in the back of their minds, and the self of the writer and the public, because I also am surprised by what comes up. So in that sense, I'm also like a reader from outside. Do I explain myself more or less?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's fantastic. I mean, I've spoken like a true artist, really. But and I know I know enough writing to where you let the character kind of tell the story and take you where you want. But Eric, he's the real writer of the bunch, between me and him, I should say. And he's kind of working on a script right now that I mean, Eric, how do you feel about that? Do you let once you get the story or the characters, you just let them kind of do their thing and write it how they want it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much. But I also feel that you should never write the story you want to tell. You have to write the story that wants to be told.
Yep.
Exactly. You said it
Yeah.
perfect. Exactly. There is an independence somehow from the writer, as it is also an independence from an artist that paints. I paint for many years. I still do, and I made exhibitions in museums and stuff. And I was always, when people would ask me, I say, well, I don't know what inspires me. It just happens, and it's something that needs to be expressed. It's like you are left like on the side, if you wish. It's very weird. It's a strange process. It's really like subconscious. Yeah.
Yeah. And anybody that listens to the show or has a creative life beyond what they do, or want to pursue a creative life, it is a crazy thing. You can't really explain it, and when you do, you almost kind of like, I don't know, it's weird, but it makes perfect sense to the people who are writers, who are artists in general. And I can tell you right now that Here Be Dragons speaks to me on that level, because and I think any artist kind of goes through this, is they kind of it's not, I guess it would be wrestle with yourself sometimes, because sometimes there's a lot of downtime for an artist, and you're trying to decide, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to pursue and try to do this? And it can be tired and frustrating sometimes,
Totally.
and I would think that would kind of be like maybe what writer's block is. I don't know, but it's still frustration. It's frustration because you can't get your message out. It's frustration. You just can't seem to get it out when you want, and yeah. And
yes.
I know, listening to you, I'm shaking my head going, yes, that's what it's about. That's what it's about, about wrestling with your own self. And so really, you had me, when you started talking about like the dragons and the metaphors and stuff. So I think it's great. And now where could we get your book? Is it available yet?
Well, yes, it is on Amazon. You have to type my name, like Alejandra Olivera, and then you type Here Be Dragons. And actually, there is a version in Spanish, which is the language in which I wrote it, and then the translation in English. I wanted to do the translation. Generally, you would write in your language, and then the editorial or whoever is going to work with your book does an English translation, French, Italian, or whatever it requires. But I was so afraid that they could kill my book in the English translation. And for me, the English translation was so important. I know they say to translate is always to betray, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
It took me like about 6 months of interviewing translators, and I think I've seen like about 60 translators.
Wow.
And giving them all kinds of paragraphs until I found the person that did the job. And he's a language professor, and he lives in Argentina. He's British. His name is Ian Barnett, and he made a fabulous translation because I wanted it to be as musical as the original, because Dragons, I find, is a very poetic book. Like, beyond the story and the narrative, there is a sound to the words that need to go, with a certain rhythm, and it needed to be just perfect and very faithful interpretation of the original book. So I translated it into English, and I feel really good about that. So you can go into Amazon under Alejandra Olivera, and then find Here Be Dragons, and you can get it over there.
Okay, all the links will be in the description of our podcast. And it's very interesting because there is a difference when you translate Spanish to English or any other language to English. And it's very interesting because it's always like the background. It's like behind the scenes stuff. Which is always good to hear, for budding writers and what they need to know, what they want to do. When you were writing your book, did you have like a marketing plan, or did you just say, hey, I just want to write it and then I'll figure it out?
No, I didn't have any plan whatsoever. It was something like having fever. It was like a tornado caught me, I said that to Cara Valverde, the girl from who we are working with now, and I said, look, it's just like a typhoon that gets you, and then you have to come out to evaluate the damages, But while you're there, you're just like, woo, you just write, it's like almost compulsory. And wherever, I was queuing in the supermarket, and I was just, do you have a pen and paper? Please, because I just needed to keep on doing what I was hearing in my head. And it was really like music, so I knew that if I would not write it, then when I would get back home or to wherever I could write this down, maybe I lost it forever. But what thoughts could I have? I even forgot to eat. It was marketing. What? that was totally in another planet. Yeah.
So what was it about the Japanese culture that influenced you for this book?
Look, I never had any relation to Japan. I never called my attention until I went to Japan some years ago, like 9 years ago, and I just freaked out. It was such a strong experience for me that changed me completely, and I could not tell you what exactly it was, but it felt totally like a piece of the puzzle that I have been missing forever. And then suddenly there it was, and it felt just right. And it just caught me. And I know Japan has that very strange effect on some people, because you got people that really don't get at all related to Japan, and people that just love it and move there, and and they become total Japanophiles and passionate about it. Yeah, so why? You're so different, so distant, so strange. But to me, it was so familiar and so close.
So, how long did it take you to write the book?
It was about 2 years.
Wow. How many drafts would you say?
Drafts, uh, I don't know. It feels like a continuous thing, but it went like, let's say that I could say that I wrote it like in 8 months or something like that. But then I went over it and I said, well, and I that was the evaluation of the damages that I went up to see. And I worked on it, and I worked a little bit on the style, on this, on that, and and that took time because I also was like very busy with other things. But during the feverish time of production, I think that period would have been like maybe 7 months, something like that.
Yeah, for me, the first draft of anything is always the most difficult, and the second, third, and so on drafts are always more fun in a lot of ways because I can finely tune the story. Now, when
Mm.
it comes to my characters, I like to write little bios for them. Does your
That's
background in
cool.
psychiatry help you with
Yeah.
developing your characters?
Yeah, that's really interesting because in a way, this is also happening in my book. Um, I I think someone that maybe inspired me a bit to work on this way was Alex Yoshua. He's an Israeli writer that wrote The Lover, and what he writes is like he goes like into the mind of each of the characters. So it's like, let's say Eric, and then he develops the way Eric sees, then Larry, and develops the way Larry sees. So after a while, when I went to the novel, I said, "Wow, this reminds me of that feeling. It's not exactly like that, but I write quite a lot about the story that is, of this person. Like, well, this person was like this and like this and like this and like this. So you can start to understand why the interventions in the novel are such. It's like she was brought up by her father, and this happened, and this happened. And so you say, oh, now I see. So it brings compassion to characters that you would actually hate when you're reading it. And say, and you go through the process of people that are thinking about them in those terms. You say, well, now I understand this person. So in the end, you end up like feeling a lot of compassion for all the characters and understanding each of them through these kind of bios, if you wish.
Okay, so it's very interesting. If we can just go back a little bit to about how important it is to get your idea down wherever you are, so you won't lose it or forget about it. And I'll ask you, and I think I know the question, but is that a totally normal feeling being in a restaurant or a grocery store and having to think like that? Was it totally normal to you to just go, oh, I need to write this down?
Well, when I was more intensely into painting, it would happen to me that we would be in a restaurant. I would not be finishing with the meal, and I would say, okay, I need to go now. And I would get up and leave. So in a way, it was good because, well, she's an artist. She can be forgiven.
Yeah.
That was
That's
fantastic.
Great. That's great. That's great. And I noticed on your website, and your website will have a link on your site. Yep. And I noticed you have some work on your website. For it's a series, right? What you called. And then you also have it. Can you talk a little bit? I know we're talking about your book, but you've
Yeah,
got
no,
so
no, no, but
many
everything is
interesting
linked.
facets. Yeah,
Everything is
yeah.
linked. You know, as I um as I evolve, as I live, I've realized now that everything is linked together. There was a moment where I thought, wow, you know, I am so dispersed because of this, because of it. But then I realized that there was nothing of the sort, that everything was leading exactly to the same point. And when you mention that series of work, it's a very oriental concept, which is like the 24-jet qi. In China, they discovered that there are actually more than 4 seasons a year, that there are like many, many micro seasons, like the season of the awakening of the insects, the season of the beginning of the summer, the season of the solstice. So they discovered so many seasons that they were like about, I don't know, they would divide the year. They were going according to the moon. They would divide it like into mini fractions. So in time, it got more synthetic, and they decided like it was okay. Like they were going to settle on 24. So there are like 24 seasons in the year, and I like this concept of seasonality because it's very much related to the tea ceremony and the way of vision of the whole Japanese relation to nature and certain foods, and you know the kaiseki, which is a traditional tea ceremony food, and what you hang there in the alcove, which is called tokonoma, in the tea house. So I wanted to produce this series in relation to each one with the season. There are many repeated, like the awakening of the insects is like different views of the same. So it's related to that.
Very, very.
As you probably know, the Japanese absorbed all the culture from the Far East. It's like from Korea, from China, even from India.
Wow.
And they treasured it long after it disappeared from everywhere else. You see, like Buddhism in Japan, they made an art out of it. You see all this Zen Buddhism, when in India it's already gone. And Buddhism was originally born in India. So it's like a big, how you say, like a storage place for all the beautiful things that happened in the Far East.
Wow.
And it all ties back to your book, Here Be Dragons. And it's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, I want to say, before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you for joining us on the show and sharing your creativity with us.
No, thank you so much.
It was an absolute pleasure having you on. And then, do you have anything else you're working on right now?
At the moment, I am just brewing. I know there's always something there, but I quite don't know yet. But you caught that feeling, right, Eric? Because you write scripts, right?
Yeah, very much.
So, you know, something is brewing there really deep inside in the vault. So, you know, I just have to keep on doing what I do. You know, I take care of our organic vegetable garden. We do sourdough bread. I do have my own butter at home. So, you know, meanwhile, I keep on this relation with nature and the seasons and art, and I just grow with it. And then suddenly something else pops out, you know, babies, in all kinds of shapes.
Yep. Yeah. And you know, so much of the creative is like that, you know, and I think that's again, Here Be Dragons is a good metaphor for that downtime that artists, I think, need. They don't want to necessarily go through it. I know I think I'm kind of in that spell right now, where you're just kind of like, you know, like nothing's happening, what's going on? But there's plenty of happening. But you know, you just got to look past that stuff. And I know that, and you know, being able to talk to brilliant people and artists like yourself, and even bouncing stuff off of Eric. You know, I know that there's a time and place, and we just have to go through stuff, and that's it. We just have to go through it, and but that's what creates better artists, and I can see that. I can see that through our interview today, and things that you've written. So it's beautiful, and I just want to say thank you.
And
thank you so much.
And I think that is the perfect way to end this episode. Everyone who listened, have a happy and safe week or weekend. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.